Hello and welcome back. In my last video, part 10, I discussed the fourth decree to rebuild and restore Jerusalem and why that is the decree of Daniel chapter 9. That decree was made by King Artaxerxes I in the year 444 BCE. In this video, I will be discussing the chronology that leads up to the time of the Messiah. Before I get into the actual chronology of Daniel chapter 9, we first need to discuss how the Jews looked at the passing of time relating to months and years. In the Genesis creation account in the Bible, in Genesis 1 verse 14, it says, "And God said, Let there be lights in the expanse of the heavens to separate the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years." So the Bible says that the sun and the moon would be there for mankind to view and understand the seasons, days, and the years. This is also mentioned in Psalms 104 verse 9. He made the moon for seasons. The sun knows the place of its setting. So not surprisingly, the Jewish calendar is based on lunar cycles. Towards the beginning of the moon cycle, it appears as a thin crescent. That is a signal for a new Jewish month. The moon grows until it's full during the middle of the month, and then it begins to wane until it cannot be seen. It remains invisible for approximately 2 days, and then the thin crescent reappears and the cycle begins again. The new moon is the start of every Jewish month. It is the most pivotal date in the Jewish calendar. Without the new moon, there could not be any of the Jewish holidays. All the Jewish holidays revolve around the date of the new moon. Niacin, or the month of April, is the first month of the year on the Jewish calendar. Before the Jews left Egypt on the first day of the month of Nisan, Yahweh told Moses and Aaron in Exodus chapter 12, verse 2, he says, "This month will be to you the beginning of months. It will be the first month of the year to you." So to find this Kodesh, or the beginning of months of the year, as the Jews call it, the new moon crescent closest to the vernal equinox will be the start of the first month of the year, Nisan. So Nisan is the first month of the Jewish year, as you can see here from this list of months. Starts with Nisan, then Iyar, Sivan, Tammuz, Av, Elul, Tishri, Chesvan, Kislev, Tevet, Shavat, Adar 1 and Adar 2, Adar 2 being for the leap years. The current names of months on the Hebrew calendar were chosen during the time of Ezra and Nehemiah after the Babylonian captivity in the 5th century BCE. The Jews had just returned from 70 years in Babylonian exile and chose names that were familiar to them. Thus all the official names of the Hebrew months have their origins in Babylon. In the Bible, the word year can mean different things, but it never refers to the Gregorian solar year on which our modern-day calendars are based. Most of the time, it refers to the Jewish calendar year, which was based on lunar cycles and the occasional inclusion of leap months. However, there is another similar type of year that was defined long before Israel became a nation or before their Jewish calendar was created. This other type of year is often called a biblical year, or sometimes known as a prophetic year. This type of year is exactly 360 days in length, consisting of 12 30-day months. We first see a glimpse of this simple 360-day year in the account of the flood of Noah way back in Genesis. The relevant verses come from chapters 7 and 8. In Genesis 7, verse 11, it says, "In the 600th year of Noah's life, in the 2nd month, on the 17th day of the month, on the same day all the fountains of the great deep burst open, and the floodgates of the sky were opened." Genesis 7, verse 24 says, "The water prevailed upon the earth 150 days. And then down to Genesis chapter 8, verse 3, it says, "And the water receded steadily from the earth, and at the end of 150 days the water decreased." And then Genesis 8, verse 4 says, "In the 7th month, on the 17th day of the month, the ark rested upon the mountains of Ararat." Note that from Genesis 7:11 and 8, verse 4, we see the span of time extends from the 17th of the 2nd month to the 17th of the 7th month, which is exactly 5 months. Meanwhile, Genesis 7:24 and 8:3 equate these same 5 months with exactly 150 days. The implication is that each month is 30 days. 5 months times 30 days equals 150 days. From this we derive that the closest thing to a year must be 12 30-day months, which is 360 days. It is known from history that 360-day years were used in many cultures around the world, including ancient Mesopotamia, which would be the time and place that Noah lived. It's only natural then that Noah would record months and days according to that calendar, and that Moses would accurately relate Noah's account. When Yahweh delivered his people, the Israelites, from Egypt by his servant Moses, it was around the year 1445 BCE. Moses was very knowledgeable about both the luni-solar calendar and the 360-day calendar, since he was trained in all the wisdom of the Egyptians, as Acts chapter 7, verse 22 says. And Moses was instructed in all the wisdom of the Egyptians, and he was mighty in his words and works. The Egyptians used at least 3 different calendars: the 360-day calendar, a luni-solar calendar, and one kept in synchronization with the stars. The initial Egyptian calendar was based on 12 months of 30 days in length for a total of 360 days per year until around the year 2900 BCE, when the Egyptians created a civil calendar made up of 365 days per year. Their civil calendar was split into 12 months of 30 days with an additional 5 days attached at the end of the year. By doing this, the year was more accurate over longer periods of time, keeping the seasons from slipping out of sync, like the 360-day calendar would do without it being adjusted. In the time that Gabriel spoke with Daniel in Daniel chapter 9, a biblical year of 360 days was still being used. In fact, the Jews, while they were still in captivity, were learning the basics of their modern-day Jewish calendar from the Babylonians. The history of the Jewish calendar can be divided into the following 3 periods. The biblical period, it was during this period, which was between Abraham's call to enter Canaan and Jacob's entry into Egypt and the time of Moses, that the understanding of the calendar was based entirely upon the 360-day calendar and observation of the sun and moon. The Talmudic period, this period occurred around the year 500 BCE and rested upon observation and reckoning. And then you have the post-Talmudic period, this period which took place from about 690 BCE to the 11th century AD, rested entirely upon reckoning. So it took many centuries to develop the Jewish calendar. In the Jewish luni-solar calendar, the days of the month are set to the phases of the moon, while the number of months are ordered by the length of the solar year. Lunar months are not 30 or 31 days long as the secular or civil calendar, but rather about 29.5 days. The lunar year is 12 months long, or approximately 354 days, which is 11 days shorter than the solar year of 365 days. Half days are impossible to factor into a calendar, so the Hebrew calendar is broken down into either 29 or 30-day monthly increments. After the exile, the Hebrews continued to use the Babylonian calendar for about a century. Then they established a calendar council called Sod Hadaber in Hebrew. This consisted of the president plus 2 to 6 members of the Sanhedrin who were skilled in astronomy and mathematics. Until the mid-4th century CE, the Calendar Council set the religious and secular calendar up for the Jews of Jerusalem and the growing diaspora. Every month they were tasked with setting the first day of each month by direct observation of the moon's phases and determining whether the extra leap month was required to maintain the balance between the solar and the lunar year. By the early part of the 4th century, Rabbi Hillel II held the office of Nasi of the Sanhedrin between 320 and 385 CE. Nasi is a Hebrew title meaning prince in biblical Hebrew, prince of the Sanhedrin in Mishnaic Hebrew, or president in modern Hebrew. He put a fixed calendar in place so that people would know in advance when the festivals would occur and when they could safely plant crops. The calendar did not reach its exact modern form until at least the years 922 to 924 of the Common Era. To ensure that the Jewish holidays always fall in the proper season, an extra month is added to the Hebrew calendar 7 times out of every 19 years. In other words, over a 19-year period, a 13th month is added at the end of the year, 7 times in each 19-year cycle, in the 3rd, 6th, 8th, 11th, 14th, 17th, and 19th years. If this were not done, the fall harvest of the Festival of Booths, also known as Festival of Sukkot, for instance, would sometimes be celebrated in the summer instead of the fall, or the spring holiday of Passover would sometimes occur in winter instead of the spring. So we can see why they had to adjust those calendars like that with those leap months. Okay, so far we've taken a brief look at how the Jewish calendar developed over the centuries and how the Jews kept track of time via the moon phases, the lunar calendar, and the solar calendar by adjusting the leap days or months as needed. All calendars, including the Gregorian calendar, need to be adjusted occasionally to keep them on track, though obviously the Gregorian calendar is the most accurate. If you want to study the Jewish calendar in real depth, take a look at this website, www.thebiblicalcalendar.org. You will find out more information than you'll ever need to know about the Jewish calendar here. So now that we have a better understanding of the Jewish calendar, let's go back and discuss the chronology of Daniel chapter 9 and the fourth decree to rebuild and restore Jerusalem. The prophecy of the 70 weeks is measured by using the 360 days per year, which, as we have learned, is a biblical or prophetic year. The Bible shows us that the years are 360 days long in the books of Daniel and Revelation. For example, in Daniel 9:27, it speaks about the 70th week, or the last 7 years, which is the 7-year tribulation period. I will be discussing this in my next video. Here the Antichrist breaks his agreement with Israel in the middle of the week, or 7-year period. So let's read Daniel 9, verse 27. It says, "And he," speaking of the Antichrist, "will make a firm covenant with the many for 1 week. But in the middle of the week he will cause the sacrifice and the offering to cease." So here the Antichrist breaks his covenant with Israel in the middle of the week, which is the middle of the 7-year tribulation period. In the last half of the week, or the last 3.5 years of the tribulation, which actually starts the Great Tribulation, there will be terrible persecution upon Christians. This matches with the persecution mentioned in Daniel chapter 7. Daniel 7, verse 25, it says, "And he will speak words against the Most High, and will wear down the holy ones of the Most High. And he will think to change the times and the law, and the holy ones will be given into his hand for a time, times, and half a time." Here in Daniel chapter 7, this persecution is to last for a time, times, and half a time, or 3.5 years. This phrase is also mentioned in Daniel 12, verse 7. The book of Daniel and the book of Revelation are tied together regarding end times prophecies. It's not until we look at the New Testament book of Revelation that the duration of the times or years is known. John uses the terminology of time, times, and half a time in Revelation 12, verse 14, where it says, "And the woman was given the 2 wings of a great eagle so that she could fly into the desert to her place, where she is to be nourished for a time, and times, and half a time from the face of the serpent." And speaking of the same situation within the same chapter, John says that the persecution will be for 1260 days in Revelation 12, verse 6. "And the woman fled into the desert, where she has a place prepared by God, that there they can nourish her 1260 days. John again uses this figure of 1260 days in Revelation 11, verse 3, where it says, "And I will give authority to my 2 witnesses, and they will prophesy 1260 days clothed in sackcloth." And that period is also listed as being 42 months in the previous verse at Revelation 11, verse 2, where it says, "But the court that is outside the sanctuary leave out, and do not measure it, for it has been given to the Gentiles, and they will tread the holy city underfoot for 42 months. Well, 1260 days divided by 30 days equals 42 months. Also, the 42-month period is mentioned in Revelation 13, verse 5, which speaks of the same period of persecution that says, "And there was given to him a mouth speaking great things and defaming words, and there was given to him authority to continue 42 months. So the 42 months equals the 1260 days, and that equals the time, times, and half a time, or 3.5 years. 1260 days equals 42 months of 30 days divided by 12 months, which gives you 3.5 years. So from Daniel and Revelation, we can see the length of the time, times, and half a time. I will be discussing the 70th week in more detail, but for now we're just concerned about the length of these times mentioned in Daniel. So now we know that the month is 30 days long and the year is 360 days long. But does the 360-day year correlate with the date of the cutting off of the Messiah? Well, Christ's crucifixion occurred on Friday, Niacin 14th in AD 33, reckoning his death according to the Julian calendar. Remember that because this was a span of 483 years until the Messiah, the 360-day year would have to be adjusted for leap years, as the Jews always did to keep their Sabbaths and festivals on track every year. Now in Revelation, the 360 days are for a short period of 3.5 year period, so that there's really nothing there to adjust. But since these 483 years leading to the Messiah in Daniel's prophecy are so long, we need to consider how many leap days need to be considered to be accurate in our chronology leading us to Christ. Since the Gregorian calendar is the most accurate, then all we have to do is multiply the 483 years times 360 biblical days per year as follows. 69 weeks of years times 7 equals 483 years times 360 days per year. That gives us a total of 173,880 days. So we end up with 173,880 days until Messiah arrives. Christ died on Friday, April 3rd, 33 A.D. The start of the countdown to Christ's arrival was the fourth decree of March 5th, 444 BCE, as we've learned. So now all we have to do is divide the 173,880 days and divide those days by a Gregorian year of 365.2425 days. We come up with 476 years. And we do that by dividing 173,880 days by a Gregorian year of 365.2425 days, which gives you 476 years. This is the difference between 444 BCE and 33 AD, exactly 476 solar years. Here's a chart to help understand this chronology. As you can see here, 444 BCE to 33 AD is 477 years, minus 1 year for the year 1 BCE and 1 AD because they are only counted as 1 year. That leaves 476 years times 365 days, which equals 173,740 days. Plus, you take into consideration the 116 leap years during that time, and the 24 days between March 5th of 444 and March 30th of 33 AD, we come to exactly 173,880 days. So the ending of the 69th week was on the day of Christ's triumphal entry into Jerusalem on March 30th, AD 33. The prophet Zechariah foretold about this 500 years before it occurred, that Jesus Christ would present himself to Israel as their Messiah, the King, for the last time. This is mentioned in Zechariah chapter 9, verse 9. It says, "Rejoice greatly, daughter Zion. Shout, daughter Jerusalem. Behold, your king comes to you. He is righteous and having salvation, lowly and riding on a donkey, even on a colt, the foal of a donkey." The account of the triumphal entry is recorded for us in Matthew chapter 21, starting with verse 1. It says, "When they drew near to Jerusalem and came to Bethphage, to the Mount of Olives, then Jesus sent 2 disciples, saying to them, Go into the village in front of you, and immediately you will find a donkey tied, and her colt with her. Untie them and bring them to me. And if anyone says anything to you, say, The Lord has need of them, and immediately he will send them." Now this took place with the result that what was spoken through the prophet was fulfilled, saying, "Tell the daughter Zion, look, your king comes to you, meek and riding on a donkey, even on a colt, the foal of a donkey." And the disciples went and did just as Jesus directed them. And they brought the donkey and her colt and put their garments on them, and he sat on them. And most of the multitude spread their garments in the path, and others were cutting branches from the trees and were spreading them in the path. And the multitudes who went in front of him and those who followed were crying out, saying, "Hosanna to the Son of David! Blessed is he who comes in the name of Yahweh! Hosanna in the highest!" And when he had entered Jerusalem, the whole city was stirred, saying, "Who is this?" And the multitudes were saying, "This is the prophet Jesus, the one from Nazareth of Galilee." Only 4 days after this, on Friday, Niacin the 14th, April 3rd, 33 A.D., Jesus was cut off or crucified. The 70th and final week of Daniel's prophecy is yet to be fulfilled. When that is accomplished, Daniel's prophecy will be completely fulfilled as the nation of Israel and all mankind will be blessed for all eternity under the rulership of our Messiah as he rules forever in his kingdom on earth. I would like to thank Harold W. Honer for his book called Chronological Aspects of the Life of Christ. That book makes this chronology of the 69 weeks of Daniel come together nicely. I recommend that you buy this book so you can study and examine and remember the details of this amazing prophecy for yourself, and make sure to add it to your library. Brother Honer borrowed and revised this chronological information from Sir Robert Anderson, who first came up with this chronology leading to the Messiah back in 1894 in his book titled The Coming Prince. Anderson started the date of the decree at 445 BCE instead of 444 because he counted the year 1 BC and 1 AD as 2 years, not 1. So Honer's book corrects his minor errors. I would also recommend you get a copy of Anderson's book, which can be downloaded as a PDF file for free. Okay, I'm going to end this video here. I hope you found this video informative. But stay tuned for my next video where I will be discussing the 70th and final week of Daniel's 70 weeks prophecy, which deals with the man of lawlessness and the 7-year tribulation period. Thanks very much for watching.